Hey, what's up everyone? Grayson here. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be taking a look at the BroToys Ninja Assassin Hayabush, aka a third-party Ryu Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden 3. I've had this review pending for a long while, but after way too much postponing, it's finally ready. I'm excited to show you this figure because the Kyoto Revoltech NG2 Ryu, which came out last year, was a bit of a disappointment in some regards, at least for me. So will the BroToys Ryu be a good competition for the Revoltech? Let's find out together. Before getting into the review properly, let's take a look at the packaging. It's not a good packaging, it's super basic. Obviously it doesn't have any type of Ninja Gaiden, Koei Tecmo or Team Ninja logos because it's not a licensed product, it's a third-party figure. But even putting that to the side, the box doesn't have window packaging, so you can't even see the figure inside. Anyway, BroToys logo at the top, same thing at the bottom, 1/12 scale collection figure on the side, same thing on the other. The back of the packaging is funny because it's filled with typos and spelling mistakes, missing a ton of spaces in between words, things like that. But anyway, enough about the packaging, let's get on with the review. Starting with the Sculpt and Paint, I think both of them came out great. I wouldn't say perfect, I have a few minor complaints of which I will tell you about, but overall, Sculpt and Paint did come out very well. So let's take a closer look from top, focus please, from top to bottom. Ryu's head is, in my opinion, one of this figure's strongest points. He only comes with one head sculpt, but it's absolutely gorgeous. You can see the dry brushing came out great, it brings out all the details of his headpiece, and you can see and feel the cloth-like texture of his mask. They even sculpted wrinkles on either side of the mouth, which is great attention to detail. His eyes are superbly well painted, even the black line around the iris and the pink line above the eyelid are all there, and they have kind of a glow, a shine to them, which makes them look realistic and very good. Even the eyebrows are painted. I don't know if you'll be able to make all of this out, but it's there. Going down, I'm not going to remove the scarf because I know I won't be able to tie it up around his neck as neatly as the guys at BroToys did, but I think you'll be able to see well enough. Another example of superb dry brushing work by the people at BroToys, Ryu has chainmail, or what is presumably chainmail, spread all throughout his costumes in this pattern of tiny hexagons. I know for a fact these are super tough to paint because I myself painted an NG3 Ryu Hayabusa statue that was 12 inches tall and it was still a pain in the ass to paint it properly, so I can't even imagine how tough it must be to paint it at this scale. Even though there are some imperfections like on the shin here or on the hips. Going down, I don't really like the color choice for these parts of Ryu's costume. They went with a gunmetal color, kind of a dark silver, and that screams armor to me. As in metal armor, and I've never seen all of this as metal. I always seen it as hard leather, like the recessed parts and the straps are soft leather, and the raised parts are hard leather. At least that's what it always seemed like to me. Obviously some of it is metal, like for example the edges of his gauntlets or the edges of his shin guards or the chainmail, but definitely not his chest or his abdomen or his crotch or his ass for that matter. Moving to his arms, they are alright. They don't have any shading or anything like that far as I can see, but they look okay. Then his forearms, his gauntlets, are very well painted, like I mentioned before with the dry brushing, but I think these should be a different color, these straps. They should be the same as this hard leather. I'm not really complaining because I didn't like the gunmetal color, but I think this should be the same as that, unless I'm mistaken. Then ironically, the back of his hands, which one would think should be painted silver on the edges, same as the gauntlet, they are indeed correct because they are not silver, they are supposed to be black, so they are accurate. Going down, I'm not very happy with his thighs. Between the lack of shading on the black, the wrong color of the hard leather parts, the sloppy paint job, and it's also missing silver paint on these little dots on the holsters for his kunai. Same as these 4 dots on the straps of his chest, these should be silver too. But I can paint those later, it's not really a problem. Mine has a splotch of paint on the back of the left thigh, so that sucks. The lower legs are great, no complaints there. I love this, the silver edge on the silver on the edge of the knee guard. I didn't paint that on my own statue, so I might go back and do that because it does look great. Obviously the dry brushing like we talked about, it's beautiful, superbly done. Same thing on the top of his feet. And this is all sculpted, the hard leather parts of his suit, like his toes, the heels, the back of his legs. It's a shame there isn't any shading going on or a wash or something like that to bring out the sculpt, but it's supposed to be all black, so I guess I can't really fault them for that. Going up, his back looks great, but I would have loved to see a bit more silver on these 2 parts below his shoulder blades. You can barely make out a little bit of dry brushing, but definitely not enough. And it's also missing paint here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but you see these 4 straps? They have a small metal piece right at the end, which is silver. Then these 2 straps above also have that metal piece. Well, these other 4 straps on his ribs also have that metal piece and it should be painted. They're sculpted, I can see it, the sculpt is there, they just aren't painted. Speaking of which, that's also missing on the front. 6 straps. 4 of them have the metal piece painted, but these 2 at the top on either side, they do not. I'm gonna have to paint those myself. Anyway, that's it for the Sculpt and Paint. Like I said, it's very good, but not superb. Sculpt is definitely the better of the 2, the paint job is sloppy in some parts, missing in others, incorrect in others. Overall, I would give Sculpt and Paint an 8 out of 10. But for the price point, it should be a 9.5 at least. This is a $100 figure, it should be perfect. For accessories, the figure does come with a lot of stuff, with only 3 notable omissions that I can think of. He comes with 6 interchangeable hands, notice that I didn't say 3 pairs, 1 interchangeable grip of mortar arm, 2 spare ball joints for his wrists, 6 kunai knives, the level 1 falcon's talons, the dragon sword and its sheath, the level 3 kusari gamma, the autolocom bow, 1 arrow, and the level 2 eclipse sight. So let's take a closer look. Out of the box, he comes with a pair of open relaxed hands, then he has a pair of gripping hands, and these are all the hands that are actually pairs. Aside from that, he comes with another 2 right gripping hands for holding different weapons, a left gesturing hand, and a right relaxed grip of mortar hand. I do have my gripes with the grip of mortar arm though. The sculpt is great, you can feel all the let's call them veins for lack of a better word, but the paint job is honestly quite bad. It's supposed to fade gradually from red to flesh color, but there's missing paint in several places, like below and around the elbow. You can see there's pink above that, so obviously this part should also be red or pink. Furthermore, the joint itself is only half painted, so it looks very goofy, especially when you bend his elbow. Like fully extended, it looks bad from the front, but when you bend it, that looks absolutely terrible, man. Look at that stripe in the middle, it looks super goofy. So very lazy not to paint that joint. The kunai knives are great. Personally, I prefer the NG1 version of the kunai with the red handle, but these are accurate to NG3. The fade from gunmetal to silver is very well done, and they are quite pointy too. I can see someone getting hurt if they handle them without sufficient care. Same goes for the other weapons, as we'll see in a moment. My only complaint with the kunai is that some of the holsters in Ryu's thigh can't hold the knives very securely. I do, however, prefer these kunai to the ones from the Revoltech Ryu, which are an absolute hassle because they fall every time you try to pose the figure. The Falcon's talons are great. They're one of the better accessories in my opinion. The bloody paint job on the claws is absolutely fantastic. You can see it in all of them and it looks awesome. If maybe a little bit too uniform to realistically look like blood, but I still love it. The sculpt is also very good. You can see the details on the gold bands at the top of each piece, and you can also see and feel the chainmail-like pattern there too. Overall, I think the talons look superb. Comparing them to the ones from the Revoltech Ryu, obviously they're a different style because the claws had different designs in NG2 and NG3, but they're also much easier to deal with since they are attachable pieces instead of interchangeable forearms and shins like they were in the Revoltech Ryu. That being said, while it's easy to attach the claws to the hands and feet, they're also quite fragile and they are bound to break on you even if you're being careful. The paint scrapes off easily too. All in all, the Revoltech talons are ultimately superior because they include these upper armor pieces, both on the hands and the feet, whereas the BroToys talons are just the final part of the armor, if that makes sense. So you are missing out on a few armor pieces. Paint-wise, however, I do prefer them bloody as opposed to clean, but that's just personal taste. The Dragon Sword is alright. At first I was loving it, until I saw that the back of the blade is painted black, which makes absolutely no sense and looks terrible for me. Since when is the back of the Dragon Sword black? I don't know what they were thinking. It's an easy enough fix, but it does annoy me that I have to fix it in the first place. The sculpt, however, is very nice and detailed, with sculpted reliefs on the handle, the handguard, and also the sheath of the sword. This brings me to one of my complaints though, because I wish he also came with either the Jinran Maru or better yet, the blade of the Archfiend. While the Dragon Sword is Ryu's most iconic weapon, he only uses it for one chapter in NG3, so it isn't as representative of that game. The one from the Revoltech Ryu is sadly useless for this figure because it's roughly the same size as the Dragon Sword, when in reality it should be about 20-25% larger. Also, compared to the Revoltech Dragon Sword, I think this one is inferior, not only because of the paint issues I mentioned before, but because the Revoltech sword sports the eye of the dragon, making it the true Dragon Sword, which I personally think is neat. Far as the Kusari Gamma, I'm sadly not too crazy about it. Starting with the positives, the sculpt is flawless. You can see a lot of sculpted detail, like on these fins. The paint is also very clean, on the handle, on the gold on the fins, and the fading from gunmetal to silver on the blade is beautiful. The weighted side looks very good. This red shading on top of the gold paint is really nice. However, on with the negatives, the sickle side is absolutely gigantic. It's ginormous. Look at the Revoltech one. They're supposed to be approximately the same weapon on approximately the same scale, yet the BroToys is almost twice the size of the Revoltech. Granted, this Ryu is a little bit larger than the Revoltech, as you will see when we get to the height comparisons, but no more than 5, maybe 10% larger. Definitely not twice as big, so the Kusarigama should not be this huge. You can see both chains together. But yeah, look at the sickle next to the scythe. The blade is half its size. It's completely wrong. Furthermore, the chain has its own set of problems. For one, it's too short, so there's no way you can pull off a pose like the one I'll put on the screen right now, with Ryu spinning the weight above and around him. And for another, I feel like the links of the chain are too big. The chain looks like something that would tie down a wild animal like a gorilla or a rhinoceros, definitely not something that a ninja would swing around. Anyway, let's take a look at the auto-lock combo. It's beautiful. The sculpt is on point, the paint is super clean, the dry brushing on this front part looks great. It has all 3 strings for Ryu to pull, which nice attention to detail and also looks very nice. And the arrow is also quite good, I love it. Lots of sculpted detail on the tip, which none of us had ever really noticed, because of course you cannot see the tip of the arrows in the game. Sculpted carvings, hollowed blades, even a red stripe in the middle. It looks superb really. And on the other end, the feathered end I guess, it has some silver dry brushing and red at the very tip. It also has a tiny cut so you can get a string in there in order to shoot it. However, it's weird though because the figure is missing an arrow holding hand for proper posing. For example, this Mesco Toys Robin has a hand with his fingers pinched like this, so you can get an arrow in there and leave him posed indefinitely like that, with the arrow always primed for shooting. This Ryu can only kind of do that with this hand, but it's pretty hard to get the arrow in there, and also that's not really how you hold an arrow, as far as I know. In any case, except for the missing hand, the bow and arrow are great. It's a shame the bow doesn't collapse though, to hang it from Ryu's back like in the game. Speaking of collapsing though, what does collapse is the Eclipse Scythe, which is absolutely gorgeous. I love it, 10 out of 10, figure of the year. Look at it, bro. Tuah! 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 I mean, geez man, look at this sculpt, this paint. The carvings, the fading on the blade, the sculpted details on the handle. Absolutely no complaints. Well, maybe this part right here, this crescent moon blade, it could have been silver to make it pop and break up all the gunmetal color, but that's minor. I love the scythe, best accessory by far. Regarding the missing accessories, I would have loved a flight stand with bendable arm. The figure doesn't have peg holes at the bottom of his feet, so if you don't have some spare stands in your collection, you're gonna have a lot of trouble posing Ryu in dynamic ways. Plus, you won't be posing him at all in the air unless, again, you have a spare flight stand. The Revoltech Ryu did come with a stand, this one actually, so that's a plus for him. But most importantly, another head sculpt. The figure only comes with one, and while it is beautiful, it would have been great to have, for example, a maskless Ryu head, especially since this Ryu comes from NG3, the only Ninja Gaiden in which he unmasks. All in all, I would give the accessories a 7 out of 10. There's a lot of them, which is good, but I have my gripes with every single one except for the side. Some are out of scale, some are incomplete, some aren't properly functional, the claws broke on me, some are outright missing. So yeah, a 7 sounds about right. For articulation, going from top to bottom, his head is on a double ball peg. You can rotate it all around. His scarf does hinder a little bit of the articulation, but you can easily move it out of the way, so it's no problem. It has a bendy wire on it, which is awesome, and also so much better than the Revoltech scarf, which was a solid piece of plastic. Anyway, he can look up this much, then down that much. He has a lot of tilt even with the scarf, which is great for attitude posing. And his neck itself is also on a ball joint, which works nicely in conjunction with the hair articulation. Let me show it. There you go. Going down, he doesn't have butterflies, which is really unfortunate, but at least that keeps the design of his suit intact, which is a plus. You can raise the shoulders to about here, tiny bit better than horizontal. He has a bicep swivel. Oh wait, you can rotate the shoulders all around. And he has a bicep swivel, which works great. He has double jointed elbows with very good range and good looking too, except for the grip of murder arm, which we looked at earlier. He has another swivel here on his gauntlet, so you can rotate that a full 360. And then his wrists are on a ball and a hinge, so you can use those to make his wrist bend in whichever way you want. However, the design of the gauntlet itself does hinder the articulation. This silver part gets in the way, which isn't great. The Revoltech Ryu had the same exact problem. For the torso, he has a diaphragm joint, which is on a double ball peg. He can rotate all around, and he can lean to the side this much. Very good range when leaning forward. Also good range leaning back, although it does get gappy on the front and they didn't continue the paint or the sculpt, so it doesn't look great, but it's functional. Then the waist is also on a ball peg, and he can also lean on all directions, looks good and does a great job. Using both joints in conjunction, he can lean to the side this much, then to the front to the back this much, which is great, I love that. And lean forward this much, which is really good. Oh, but it does look goofy on the back because they duplicated the chain mail. That is very silly. They should have elongated this bottom part here, make it keep going upwards and not sculpt the silver edge. Then it would have been perfect. That's a shame. His diaper is a rubber piece, but not super soft. I wouldn't force that or leave Ryu with his legs spread out for prolonged periods of time. His hips are on another ball joint. He can kick to the side about this much before the kunai holsters get in the way. It's very good range to the sides. He can almost do the splits. However, very little range kicking forward. That's absolutely terrible. The thigh swivel gets in the way, it gets caught in the diaper. And he can kick back around this much before it starts going to the side, so again, terrible kick range. He has a thigh swivel which works perfectly and is greatly appreciated, very helpful with posing. Then he has double jointed knees, but sadly they don't have a lot of range. He can't kick his own ass. The leather of his costume gets in the way. No boot swivel, which is unfortunate, but his feet are on a ball joint, which works great. They can go forward about this much. and back about this much, which is nice. Beautiful ankle pivot, and he has toe articulation, which is well executed, no lumps, and pleasantly looking too. So articulation is a mixed bag. The arms are great, his head and neck are beautiful, his torso is superb. But I believe the hips hurt him a lot. He can kick to the sides, but forward and back kicks are laughably bad. He has a thigh swivel but no drop down hips. His feet are great, but the knees can't bend very well. It's like for every pro there's a con, and overall I feel like the cons outweigh the pros. Ryu should definitely be able to kick and use his legs better than this. Especially if you got him for his role in Dead or Alive, you are gonna be wanting him to do a lot of kicking, and he simply can't do it properly. So for articulation, balancing out the good and the bad, I feel he gets like a 6 or a 7, which is unfortunate, especially for the price point. He can't articulate like a Revoltech or even like a Mayfix. He's at around Marvel Legends articulation, but those figures cost $25, not $100. Now measuring the figure, you can see Ryu stands at around 17 centimeters tall, which makes him 6 6/8 inches. For comparisons, here he is next to the Epoch Dead or Alive 2 Hayabusa and the Revoltech NG2 Ryu. Then here he is next to a couple customized NECA Ryus. Now next to the Duel of the Masked statue from NG3 Collector's Edition. And finally next to a McFarlane Halo 3 Hayabusa Armor Spartan just for kicks. Now let's see how he compares with other 1/12 scale action figure lines. First here he is with Bucky Cap Daredevil and Pizza Black Suit Spider-Man from Marvel Legends. Then here he is with an SHF Spike Spiegel and a Sentinel Iron Man. And last but certainly not least, next to Mezco Grayson and Mayfix Grayson. So I'm torn about this figure. I had a lot of fun messing around with it and taking pictures, especially since I used a lot of effect pieces and other stuff from my collection. Personally, I like it, both as a Ninja Gaiden fan and as a collector. Hell, I think I prefer it to the Revoltech because it doesn't make me as annoyed as that one did. The fun factor is definitely very high, but trying to be objective, he got an 8 for Sculpt and Paint, a 7 for accessories, a 6 or 7 for articulation. That comes to 22 divided by 3, which comes to 7. Obviously, 7 sounds super low, like it's a terrible figure, but I really don't think that's the case. I have over 300 action figures and I wouldn't even call this one mediocre. I believe it's good. Then again, it does have a lot of problems. If you gave this figure to a reviewer who isn't a fan of Ninja Gaiden, he would probably tear it to pieces. But maybe some of my criticisms come precisely from being a Ninja Gaiden fan, from knowing the games and how things should look, and maybe other reviewers wouldn't notice things like the Kusarigama being so oversized. Alas, that only accounts for the issues I had in relation to the accessories. The articulation problems, however, are 100% real, same with the paint issues and so on. The only thing that is pretty much flawless is the sculpt. So yeah, a 7 sounds about right. With that said, thanks for watching my video and I hope you enjoyed this review. Stay safe and I'll see you next time.